Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, welcome, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of our viewers around the world, and a special welcome to our viewers in E360 TV. A very warm welcome to our viewers watching on the live broadcast and also on the replay. Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. My name is Caroline Heward and known as the Harley Street Stress Expert. Our show today is Talking Heads, and I'm an expert presenter in today's topic, which is separation harder than divorce? And it's part of the Mind and Body Connection series. So let's begin. I'm going to start off with a quote by David Whyte. And this will really set the scene for our topic today. You will always love the person if you're sensible, but you get a lot of people, especially in divorces and separations, doing a lot of damage to themselves because they can't figure out how they actually still love this person, but not in their original way. David Whyte. This is a really integral part of this conversation, because when you get married, when you decide to be with somebody and you take your vows, especially if you've got married to them, then you never really plan for having a divorce or a separation. And you are getting married or entering into that relationship because this is the person that you want to spend forever with. So we don't enter into the conversation and the experience with the end in mind. So is separation harder than divorce? Well, all sorts of words come up: custody, marriage, the ending, children, and relocation, or dissolving a relationship that was, court, lawyers, and it all can be quite overwhelming when really something's happened in terms of the emotion of that relationship. Something's happened in terms of the way that you both connect or disconnect with each other. And so there is a process when things stop working to move forward into a new life, a different life without the person. And in the same time as that these things come up that you have to consider and think about, it can be very overwhelming. It can be very, there's a word that comes to mind straight away now, and it's called discombobulating. And essentially it's where you feel that it's all too much. It can put you in overwhelm and it can take you off your ground and the way that you would normally operate. And it will take you out of an experience of feeling in control, because there's so many other things to think about when you are in that relationship and not feeling that you want to stay in it. So separation sometimes is the precursor to deciding whether you're going to divorce. And it's the first place that most people will enter into in a conversation, not only with themselves, but with their partner. And the reason for that is because Sometimes people feel that if you have some time apart, it will give you time to consider, to work out, to have space to decide whether it is right for you to stay in that relationship or not. And sometimes the very opportunity of saying it's not working for me anymore, I'm not happy anymore, and I want to leave, can be a huge weight off your shoulder. But at the same time, it can leave you feeling, whoa, overwhelmed at what next? What do I do? And sometimes it's so overwhelmingly painful because you're leaving what you knew, what you know, and even though it's not comfortable, you're leaving something that is uncomfortable, and at the same time not knowing what's on the other side of that place of being uncomfortable. Because there's all sorts of things to consider, especially if you have children. And especially if you've got property together, if you have a house together, assets together, all of these things come into the equation of making a decision. Separation, divorce. Divorce is very final. It's the place where you're saying, that's it, no more, I'm done. And then when you get to that place, there is all the considerations of what a divorce means. So sometimes separation can be the softer option before you take those bigger, gigantic steps in terms of making it a legal separation, in terms of a divorce. So there are many mitigating experiences and circumstances that will make you decide whether separation or divorce. There is no easy way to answer this, because what we're going to handle and look at is the emotions as well as the practical stuff behind whether separation or divorce. Let's look at some stages of separation. The first stage of separation is very like a bereavement where somebody physically passes away, and that's denial. Because nobody wants to admit that it's not working anymore, that it's all fallen apart. And nobody wants to admit that they're not happy anymore, because it's not what you entered into. You didn't enter into a relationship looking at the end in mind. So there is a denial. And certainly when my marriage was really not working for a number of years, I was in a huge amount of external denial, because I didn't want to look silly. I didn't want to look like I had failed. And this is one of the things that comes up for many people, that sometimes it will look good to the external world and to friends and family, but internally, you know it's not working. So denial is the first stage of moving towards a place of separation. From that denial, anger comes up, because you know you didn't enter into this experience of this relationship to separate, to finish it. You entered into it for much more positive reasons of love, of spending your time together and your life together. So you can sometimes feel very angry about the fact that it's not what you wanted. It's not the experience that you signed up for. And when you move through that anger, it leads into a space of feeling empty, a feeling that your cup is just not full anymore, which moves into a place of depression, a shutdown of feelings and emotions. Because when things aren't working and it's hard and it's difficult, we tend to shut down the feelings and emotions because it's hard, it's difficult to feel. And so you move into a place of depression. And then the final stage of separation, and we're not talking about divorce here, is accepting the fact it's over. Accepting the fact that there is no way forward for you or your partner to move forward and stay in that relationship. And when you get to that place, and it can take whatever time it can take 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years. It can take 10 years, 5 years. It depends on you as a person and the couple and what there is in terms of collateral damage, because if there are children involved, many couples, whether they're married or living together for a long period of time, many, many years, there is a situation where some people will stay together because of the children. I have no axe to grind if people do that. The challenge that happens is the children then start to feel an experience of what not to stay or get married for. Because if the parents are always arguing with each other and there is an atmosphere and there is obviously a non-love or an unlove and a hurt within the relationship, this is what the children start to grow up with and recognize as marriage. And certainly that will create in their lives a challenge in terms of moving forward to decide to be in a relationship of any description. So ending your relationship, separation or divorce. So we're looking at the main aspects of why you would choose a separation versus divorce, and what are the implications of both. For both separation and divorce, there is closure. There is a way of ending the hurt, a way of ending what's not working. And so closure is a very grown-up way of moving forward. It's a very grown-up way of saying, hey, we looked at this, we had a go, we gave it our best shot. This is not working. Because when you're together in a relationship, sometimes people will have an external experience of how they're being and showing up in the world. And then they also have an internal representation of how they show up with themselves and in their own home and domain and in their relationship. So there might be the life and soul of the party externally, but internally they might be quite an introvert. And so when you meet the person from the perspective of that social environment and meeting somebody in that neutral place of not being and living with them, then you might be seeing and experiencing a very different person to the one that you end up in a relationship with, that you end up living with. And so if it's not what you signed up to, then it's very challenging for many to close it or to say, hey, I got that wrong. This isn't what I thought it was. This isn't what I signed up to. And that takes a lot of courage to say, this isn't what I wanted. This isn't working for me. And when you do utter those words, it's not working. It then takes you into the stage of closure, of moving forward out of the relationship that stopped working for you. And there isn't a right or wrong here. There is only what's right for you as the person, and saying, this is not working, I'm not happy, therefore I want to make it end so that I feel happier in myself and in my life. This is where the feelings come in. In either separation or divorce, there are feelings that have to be dealt with. And if you are going through a divorce, in a divorce situation, it is less about the feelings and more about the practicals. It's more about, I always liken a divorce to a balance sheet. It is the inputs and outputs, the debits and credits, and it's the balance sheet of the marriage. And I think that it's a very interesting way to look at it, because that's what the courts do. They separate it all out. Who has the dog, who has the access, when they have the access, and obviously the assets and liabilities, and who pays what, and who pays the bills. And then it's all agreed in some form of a legal memorandum, depending on what country that you come from. And feelings aren't in that legal bit. They are in the experience of leaving the relationship and what it brings up for you. And it's important to express how you feel, because it is quite a cold experience to go through a divorce. But it is a finality. It gives you a finality of absolute closure. Whereas a separation will still have some hanging fruit for you to work through, because a separation is also a way that you can move back into the relationship if you choose. And sometimes some people choose to stay in a separation for long periods of time without having to get a divorce, because they feel comfortable not to have to go through the legalities of sorting things out. Either way, whether you separate or divorce, you still have to consider the financial implications, especially if it's a long-term separation, because you've left the family home or you've not left the family home. One person might leave the family home, or indeed you might both choose to stay together in the family home and then have all hell break loose, because it's very hard to stay with somebody in the same home and experiencing the same experiences of hurt and pain. So what is the best? It's very dependent on you. We're all individuals, and I have known of some couples that have separated and yet still share the same home. Although that's very challenging, I do hear for some friends that I have that it seems to be working for them, and they seem to be able to find a way of moving on, because the finances are difficult for them to continue in a separate way in terms of family home, and so they tend to stay together. It's, I feel, very challenging for the man to move out of the home, because usually, especially if there's children, the law, especially in the UK, is very much along the side of making sure that the woman and her children are looked after. And usually the woman and her children have the right to stay in the family home. And then that leaves a situation for the man to have to still fund the family bills and the maintenance for the children, as well as finding accommodation for himself. So it depends on ending your relationship, separation or divorce. It depends on your personal circumstances, which is why I've been going through some of the practical things of what can come up before you decide whether separation or divorce is the right way for you. And whether it's harder, because when there are children involved, it's hard whether you're in a legal marriage or whether you are in a relationship that you've been in for a long time. If you've been with somebody for like 5, 10, 15, 20 years, sometimes it's a revelation to come out of that situation and decide that you don't want to be there anymore. And sometimes it's very challenging to look at how life can be possible without being in that relationship, even though it wasn't working and you were very unhappy. I've heard people say that the challenge of staying in a relationship that doesn't work changes them. It changes their personality. It changes their outlook on life, and it changes the way they feel. They almost shut down and become disconnected and move into what I would call a habit. They move into a place where they're going through the motions without the emotion and just moving through their daily lives without actually experiencing life, almost like you're existing rather than experiencing the joys that life brings to you. And nobody wants to live like that. And yet at times, this is the only way that's possible when there are children involved or when the finances are difficult. Sometimes people opt for this type of relationship, of living and existing, because it's easier. And usually that is surrounded by fear. Now, fear is a root chakra saboteur. I mean, fear is false evidence appearing real. And when the person can't imagine what it's like on the other side of the upset, of the hurt, of the demise they feel themselves in, they stay in that experience until they have the courage to move through it and find an alternative way forward that is without the relationship. And of course, this leads us very onto a place of healing, whether you stay in the marriage, the relationship, or whether you decide to leave through separation or divorce, there has to be a place for healing. There has to be a place for your personal healing, for the relationship healing, and also for the healing of the trauma that came out of the situation of being in that relationship. Sometimes we think we should be with someone forever because that's what we sign up to. There isn't, for some, a forever or a happy ending. And even though in fairy tales they always talk about happy ever after, or this is my lifetime partner, sometimes it doesn't work. And that doesn't make you wrong. That makes you strong. That makes you brave to face up to the fact that sometimes there is a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it's okay if you get to the point of the end, because there is life after separation and after divorce, and it depends on the implications that's right for you. And everybody's story is personal. There is no right and wrong. I know many people that have gone through very acrimonious divorces, and I know many people that have done really well through mediation, and I've been one of those people, even though it was very challenging, because the mediation wasn't about the feelings and emotions. It was really about the practicals, about the balance sheet. And I found it really conflicting for me because I had no idea a divorce was a balance sheet. It was inputs, outputs, and it was a disclosure. It was a complete disclosure of the finances and a complete disclosure of the paperwork. Now, that might be different in different countries, but certainly in England, that's what I experienced, and it took the emotion out of it. And when we went through that practical space, and I got the decree absolute through, it felt like a revival of me, of moving forward. I actually had a divorce party. Rather than, sort of feeling all melancholy, which is, I know, very American. So there is no rights and wrongs here. But there is a healing journey, whether you decide to stay in a state of separation or you decide to end everything legally with a divorce. There is no right and wrong for anyone. There is a personal circumstance and what's right for you. A separation might be the answer, and divorce might be your answer. But you're the one that decides. There isn't anyone else that can make that decision for you. But when you are in that place of deciding to separate, to move out of the family home, or indeed to end that relationship that is known to you, that is comfortable for you, that even through the uncomfortableness and the hurt of that separation and or divorce, what happens is a place of, what will I do differently next time? What have I learned from this experience? Who am I? What am I doing here? What do I want out of life? And in that place of separation and divorce, of literally leaving that relationship, it can be the making of you rather than the breaking of you. It can be where you can explore your true self and the true meaning of who you are meant to be in this world and who you are meant to be with. Because when you're in a relationship that doesn't work, it takes a lot of strength and courage to say, I need to end this and move into something else. And the first relationship is with self. That's the very first relationship that anyone should be entering into. And that relationship with self extends to the other person. Here's a quote by Laura Wasser. Once you do embark upon the separation or divorce process, it is very important to remember 3 key things. Be kind, be reasonable, be brief. Remember that this person will no longer be your spouse, but he or she will continue to be your co-parent, family member, and perhaps business partner in certain assets or entities. I feel that this is an extraordinary piece of advice to leave you with. Be kind. One of the things that I did was I killed my ex-husband, or my soon-to-be ex-husband at that point, with kindness. And that kindness that I gave to him, I actually gave to myself, even though it was very challenging situation to be in. I felt that in giving kindness and compassion to him, I actually was feeding myself, and I was healing myself through the pain, even though it was a challenging experience. The anger, the resentment, the lack of empathy and understanding of the fact that it had ended was my healing journey, as well as my then husband's healing journey. And so consider it's a personal healing journey. Thank you for your attention and your interest. Please subscribe to USA Global TV and Radio. You can find all of our Talking Heads episodes under the playlist Talking Heads 2022 for last year and 2022 for this year. You'll find all of my Talking Heads episodes under my name, Caroline Heward. Please do reach out to me if I may be of service to you. You can contact me on nomorestress@live.co.uk, or indeed you can call me on +44 if you're international, 7523 if you're local, 07523 120 189. I offer a free 30-minute Zoom, Skype, Messenger, audio, video consultation. It will help you find some order, because the first place you have to start is a place of inner healing. The first relationship is self, and everything else expands from that. It has been my absolute pleasure to deliver this, which is not the end, it's the beginning of your exploration. I offer more insights in other programs and other broadcasts that I do. Thank you so much. It has been my absolute pleasure. Namaste.